That's not miles, 10 miles. All right. Week 2, I guess, of our little mini series here, previewing the WFP season. Wow, we have some a lot of color on the show today. We have a yellow, a pink, and a red. This is pretty unusual. Definitely worth noting that jersey that Nico is back, by the way, is wearing. Nico, you just quickly tell everyone what that jersey is and why it's so meaningful to you.
This is my godson, Frederick, who is the goalkeeper for Union Berlin in the Bundesliga in Germany. That's soccer for you Americans. Well, this is not the goalkeeper jersey. This is the jersey the outfield players wear. Just representing little soccer. Now the football season is in hiatus for a while.
What's the most prestigious platform that he's been able to play in?
Well, so he was on Team of the Week in Champions League, where he played Real Madrid in Santiago Bernabeu, and he held his own until 4 minutes of added extra time, where Jude Bellingham scored and they lost. But he's been to 2 World Cups and 3 European Championships, and he's never played a minute of national soccer for Denmark at a championship.
That's awesome. I just figured since you're wearing it, that would be a cool. I mean, it's really freaking cool that he does that. Couple things just to get you here. First of all, everyone is extremely excited. Nico is back. That makes sense. Everyone, I think, thought that yesterday's show with Patrick and Kate was really good as they looked back at the open leaderboard. And finally, it took like a 10 or 12 comments. Someone acknowledged that I'm actually here. Great.
Wow. So pretty much.
I trimmed the beard, but I did wear no hat today. I'm feeling extra crazy because Nico and I were talking prior to this, and he thought that probably the men's was more difficult to sort out amongst these 20 athletes. But to me, I will admit up front, like I really struggled with the women's field. And we'll get into it. It's going to take a lot of the same shape as the men's, where I felt there was one clear favorite, and then a huge group of women who have extremely significant claims to being, in a podium position on this preseason ranking for the WFP this year. And so we'll get into the depths of that. And we're going to try to keep it to 90 minutes. We got a little bit of a tight timeline compared to last year, so we're not going to mess around too much. If you didn't see the men's show, it was last week, and we went over sort of some of the criteria and also explaining what this actually is. So some people had asked in the comments on the post, and we appreciate all the comments on the post, questions, prompts, confusions. This is my projections at this point in time of how I think that these 20 athletes will fare across the 3 tour stops that they're scheduled to compete in for the WFP. And maybe before we get into the actual rankings, it's also worth acknowledging that there will be other athletes that factor into this. There's a qualifier coming up. There'll be more information from the WFP coming out of that in the next week or so that's leading into it. And there will definitely be some significant names who end up throwing their names into the mix and mixing it up. We just don't know who they are yet. That's a good question. Nico, will you be involved in WFP media at all? They are, after all, coming to your home country in December.
They are, and we haven't signed anything yet, but I had a conversation with them last week, and I'm going to have another one tomorrow, I think. So we're just ironing out the details, but in short, to answer your question, yes, I will be shooting for World Fitness Project this coming seasons, especially in Copenhagen, but also outside of competition, doing some stuff with the European athletes, help tell the stories, and And I wanted to say one thing. Some people say maybe this won't go well. Maybe it's going to go well. Who knows? Regardless of what happens, just the imprint that Will and the whole team has put on, just trying to do something, trying to create something. I don't care how. Of course, I want it to go well, but the legacy of them trying will stand regardless of how it pans out. It's a huge mental, obviously financial investment. And yeah, I think they should be proud regardless of what happens from here on out.
Yeah, there was a comment about that last week. It said this thing won't last more than 2-3 years, whatever. And I said, who knows? All I know is that it's here this year. They have
Let's enjoy it then.
Yeah, exactly. They've created a competitive outlet that at least these 20 women we're about to go over are definitely at least scheduled to be competing at. They'll have challengers that are coming for their pro card. So If it doesn't last more than 2 years, who knows? But for the time being, we're set up to see some of the best athletes that we know in this sport that will compete, for the opportunity to do it again next year. So let's dive into it. Patrick did an incredible job as always on the Instagram. I think we're going to use that as the basis for the conversation. There is an article supplementing it on B.Friendly Fitness where I, give a sentence to a paragraph about each athlete, and then we'll elaborate upon that. And I already hinted at it, but right off the bat, we're going to start at the top again and work our way down. I just like it for this. You have kind of one tier that I've designated as the favorite in the women's field, and it's Laura Horvath. There's probably two sides to this coin. One is a very big sign to say, by and large, when Tia is not in the field, Laura is the woman to beat. And then the kind of small other side of the coin is, but she just lost in Miami to a woman we'll talk about in a second, Lucy Campbell. So we'll get to Lucy, but first things first, we'll go with Nico and then Patrick. Would you agree that Laura is on paper the woman to beat in this field?
Yeah, of course. When she steps on the field of play, and there's in this universe there's no Tia-Clair Toomey, it's kind of similar to when Tia-Clair Toomey steps on the field of play. I do recognize she lost. We can discuss the point system of Wodapalooza or whatever all day long. Hats off to Lucy Campbell. She beat her fair and square. That was 6 events, and it was not a test of fitness. Wodapalooza is not claiming to have a test of fitness. But, of course, Laura Horvath lost there. She's going to say she lost. But over the course of whatever we came to 4,000 points, no, there's bearing injury, of course, knock on wood, Laura's going to win this, and she's going to win this by a substantial margin.
Patrick, anything to add about Laura?
I think I agree because, as we all well know, Laura can win events in bunches. She can go on, winning 3, 4, 5 events in a row. And some of those events she could probably win more of if Tia was in the field. Well, Tia's not in the field, so that just makes her more the favorite in non-specialty workouts. I think when it comes to couplets and triplets, Laura is just heads and above beyond everyone else, not named Tia. And Ariel can probably give her a run for money in certain workouts that include that. And obviously there's some in Alexis Raptis, athletes that we'll talk about later. But I think with the point system, it weighs so heavily with winning, and there's no better athlete in this field when it comes to winning, not just individual events, but actual whole workouts. So, individual competitions, but whole workouts. So I think her ability to hit so many home runs or win so many events will play in her favor and help her out at the end of the year when they total up the points and they see and that's the reason why she's going to blow everyone away, I think.
Yeah, and also looking back at Wodapalooza, again, Lucy, if you're listening, I'm not taking anything away from your triumph because it was a great weekend for you. But there's 6 events, and we all know Laura's history with handstand push-ups, especially wall-facing strict handstand push-ups. And we knew she was going to take a hit, but you're going to pair that with a bench press workout afterwards, or before that, actually. And she took a 19th and a 10th, I believe. So that's 2 events. That's 33% or 1/3 of the competition. So, it's hard, even being as good as Laura is, coming back from that. It was just, a little unlucky on the programming. And I think the worst thing that could have happened for this entire field was for Laura not to win Wodapalooza. She is pissed off, and you don't want that. She was already better than all of you, and now she's hungry and mad. So good luck.
This comment came up here. It's any doubts about the ranking since the programming is unknown for now. I think, we can only do with the information we have. They have released a list of movements or implements or whatever, and it looks like a lot of CrossFit. It looks like the stuff we're used to seeing. Obviously the combinations we'll see, but again, that's what the prescription of testing for fitness is varied combinations of relatively predictable implements and movements, and those are all publicized. So plus, it's a new thing, but Will Morad has been competing in the sport of CrossFit for 12, 13 years or something like that. Like and he's coming off a championship in the Masters division. Like that's his pedigree. He owned an affiliate. He's coached in affiliates. Like, so I think that, the people who want to draw attention to it will and say, this is just CrossFit with a different name. Like, yeah, it basically is. It's competitive fitness. And so I think that we'll see maybe some differences and some unique stamps of kind of a new programmer in this space. That's not unusual. I would say you're also going to see that at Syndicate Crown if you haven't watched JR's events before. And there'll be elements of his programming that are slightly different from previous programmers. But by and large, these athletes will still be able to execute and perform at a fairly comparable level to what we're used to seeing from them. All right. Laura, favorite on paper, obviously fueled by a loss in Miami. And I know there's some people that were taking a big exception to this. So first of all, podium threats actually almost identically to the men. For me, this goes from 2 down to 9. It was exactly the same on the men's side, where I had 8 people that I thought were like legitimate threats for the podium. And I tried to, this particular group of women, I moved them around like so many times. I'm personally happy with how it ended up. I know not everyone is, which is okay. And Lynn makes this comment here to Nico, her new favorite person. Tell Brian his picks are very biased towards Wodapalooza showings. And what I would just say is the next 3 women on the list are Lucy Campbell, who finished who finished first there. Alexis Raptis, who did finish 3rd there. Not at 100% that weekend, by the way. And Ariel Lowen, who had her worst competitive performance at a large competition, 17th in quite a while. And so, yeah, you could say I'm being biased towards Lucy and Alexis towards that, but the reasons I picked them to do well here are not exclusive to Wodapalooza. And I still am acknowledging that Ariel is a podium threat at any major competition when she's feeling her best, which she was not at Wodapalooza also. So we'll dive into it. We'll start with these 3. We'll go in order. And I'll just say for Lucy Campbell, 6 events, as Nico mentioned, at Wodapalooza. 3 of them were testing things that were some of the most difficult movements for her to recover from on the way back from this really crazy wrist injury and situation that she's been dealing with for the better part of 2 years. Those would be the front rack position in the heavy clean, high volume ring muscle ups, and long distance handstand walking. She, despite having half of the events not be in her favor, taking a near last on the lifting event, she ends up at the top of the podium. And my question is not if Lucy is a podium threat this year. My question is, how good can she actually be?
I felt last week that putting Luca 12th was, and you admitted it, a slight hint of nepotism, favoritism, whatever you want to call it. And I think nepotism is the right word. I like Lucy, and we work together, obviously, in Dubai, and she's a great person, fun to be around. This has gone too far, and this is not me coming at Austin Hatfield like last week, because that had some merit to it. Putting Lucy in a conversation for a podium is, and maybe I'm stupid, and Lucy, I'll buy you a beer in Copenhagen if I am. She's not gonna podium. She's not gonna make the top 5. Like it's a flash in a pan. Maybe there will be other flashes, but right now what we have is a sample size that's way too small to say anything about Lucy Campbell. I was there at Lowlands Throwdown with you, Brian, when she qualified back in 2021. Was it? 22? Yeah. And it was amazing. And she did great. Obviously, she won an event at the CrossFit Games.
2 events.
2 events, most memorable, obviously, the one Roman also won, Roman Krenikov, the ski and swimming event in the pool, which was a crazy fun event to watch, where she edged out Amanda Barnhart. Great event, go watch that on YouTube. But there's just not enough data to support this. I get she's on an upwards trajectory, but you have 2 data points. You have her not existing, being injured, like completely off the whatever score chart you want to use, and then she had a great 2 days, but it's an hour of fitness combined, like maybe 2, but not taking anything away from Lucy. Again, she won a major competition, and it has to be recognized. She did that, but it's one step too far to put her in there. But that this is what this whole thing is about. It's a matter of opinion, and you can have your moments, and and people will maybe over exaggerate just how good you actually are. But if she comes back in the first event in May and backs this up, I'm gonna eat my words. If she takes top 3 there, I'm gonna say, okay, Wodapalooza was a true showing. But I need to see stuff repeated over time. Had this been the CrossFit Games she had won, where you typically have 11 to 14 events, sure, I'd buy into the narrative. But this was 6 events, and as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, it was not a great. It was a good test. It was not a great test of fitness. But yeah, again, Lucy, congrats on your victory.
So just to be clear, Nico is frustrated with me and not Lucy. Pacey, where do you fall on this? Is this too high, way too high, or is there actually some possibility that she could do this?
That's like maybe it's because you're not wearing a hat, but I have no idea who you are anymore. Last week it was Austin. This week it's Lucy. You're like going against your norm. I mean, when we first met, I was a guy that like took risks. Like, oh yeah, Jason Hopper's going to win the games, and then you're always the guys like, no, it's all about history. It's about consistency. It's about like their past. And yes, Lucy Lucy did great her games appearance, but she's been dealing with issues. And I love Lucy. Everyone knows. I mean, everyone here can agree that Lucy's a great person.
Yeah,
an extremely gifted athlete. However, you putting that basis on an event like Nico said, yeah, pink. Thanks. But I just don't know. I think if this was the games field, I don't think you would have her second. If this was the CrossFit Games and you had to rank the CrossFit Games, I don't think you would have her on the podium. So I'm wondering why you have her ranked this high. And granted, again, it's power rankings, so it's based on what's current or what's known.
Well, and in this case, not so much. This is actually what I think is a potential. And then, not seeing on the competition floor are the conversations that I've had with Lucy privately and with Cheska, who represents her and has for a long time. And also, kind of somewhat in the vein of what Nico spoke about last week, timing of events and events wins matters a lot. 4 second place finishes in the field out of 6 opportunities in Wodapalooza is notable. And there were several athletes that are in this field that will be in that field. And I don't, I don't know that the depth of the women's field is the same as the men's field.
But again, timing of events. She has a home run. She's gonna win. She's gonna win an event, and she's gonna win whatever swimming event comes her way. She's gonna beat Emma Tall. Because she's just better than Emma Tall in swimming. But that swimming, I hope it's not coming in Copenhagen in December. At least not an open water swim.
It is. It is.
Is it?
Yeah.
Are they swimming in Copenhagen?
Yes, that's what they've said.
Indoor pools.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. That goes in your that speaks into your narrative because that's 200 points. So sure, I'll take the bait there. That will help.
I do think that there's some variables that could have a huge impact for Lucy. So, for example, if a heavy clean event shows up in Indianapolis, that's going to be the worst case scenario. If it shows up in Mesa, a little better. If it shows up in Copenhagen, even better for her, because we know that's an issue. I think that she has also gained a new level of confidence, having executed on some events that surprised her as much as anyone else in Miami. And what I do know is that her base of, I guess you could say, muscular endurance and aerobic capacity in the things that she's been able to train consistently is clearly still very high. So I will acknowledge this is a risky pick and maybe unprecedented, maybe for a nice word to summarize what Nico said. But I'm going to stand by the fact that I think that there's a legitimate chance that Lucy has a top 3 total points finish come December.
Wait, why is it better for her if the clean comes in Copenhagen? That's going to matter double. It's her.
Well, just because she'll have had a chance to get under heavy barbells more and more, so that's actually maybe.
She's not relatively going to be good at it. She took 26 at the CrossFit Games when she was there in the sandbag ladder.
Maybe you're right. Mesa would be the optimal place for her to have that.
Yeah,
least points available, most time to prepare for it.
Yeah,
that's a good.
But then again, she took second in an endurance event, and that's 1/6 of the points in Wodapalooza. I don't think you're going to see.
She also took second on a very, very fitness event, the final. muscle ups and thrusters and barbell cycling and what was it? I can't remember what the fourth thing was, but
against a very different field than what she's going to face at the World Fitness Project.
Well, you can say that, but she's got Laura Horvath, Alexis Raptis, Emma Tall was in that field. I know Elisa Fuliano is not in this field, but there are athletes comparable to her. Spiegel was in that field. Sydney Wells was in that field. Kringle, Rolfe, Wells.
But can we just be honest and say people are this is going to be their season. They're going to give it their all. People don't necessarily show up for Waterpalooza at 100%. Alexis, yes, Alexis Raptis was there, but you know, a few people was like semi-injured and but let's see.
There are definitely going to be athletes who will have a premium focus on this competition, and just like we spoke about on the men's side, there'll be others that are going to have a huge competitive season. I don't know what Lucy's priorities are this year either, and that was the case for a lot of the women in this group, which also made it difficult for me to necessarily assess what level of preparation they're going to bring to each of these tours.
Is she signed up for the Open?
Lucy
finished 11 and 25.
11th on 25.1.
So think about that. That's a lot of burpees for her. So that's a lot of stress on her wrist. We talked about it on our show yesterday. She obviously showed that capacity, and that's a lot of flexion to the wrist on those burpees. And she finished 11th, tied for 11th actually. So it was rather impressive actually, I thought.
I'll say this.
Go ahead. Not impressive enough to have her ranked second, in my opinion.
Perfect. All right, so debate is out. We'll see. Lucy obviously has made a splash already this calendar year, and how big of a splash she'll make throughout WFP season remains to be seen. I think it's going to be notable. These guys think that I'm maybe going a little too far with that, which is understandable. Third pick, I ended up putting Alexis Raptis here. I have been told from a few people that if she was 100% in Wodapalooza, she would have been the winner of that competition.
Yeah, she would.
Obviously that's like similar to the conversation with Roman Kredikovs at the game. He got hurt. When you have ifs thrown into the equation, what I can say is that I feel like Alexis, and maybe this is a good conversation here. We can talk about Alexis and Ariel. Like Ariel has been in this 3 spot, and she's been like making significant podiums at the games, Rogue. This is Alexis's first podium at a major competition that's not a semifinal in her career. And when you just look at the relative normal trajectory of women, she's just now entering into the age where we expect women who have a significant enough training age to make a really significant impact on major leaderboards. She's also, if I understand correctly, moved to be back into an environment that I think is really appropriate and beneficial for her to be living in, to have more of a life balance. And this is definitely true. There are some ifs with Alexis, specifically relating to the colitis and the health stuff. But I think that we're about to see the best competitive year that we've ever seen up to this point from Alexis Raptis.
I think you putting her at third is a safe bet, because I actually think she's a lock for the podium. But I think she's definitely, in my mind, definitely the runner-up, if not the closest competitor to Laura. What we saw at Wodapalooza, it was a less than 100% Alexis, but it's the best version of Alexis we've seen in a while. The happiest version we've seen of Alexis for a while. She has medication that she's comfortable with, that's controlling a lot of it, and you can see that. And I think she doesn't have too many glaring weaknesses. She's obviously the best when it comes to being on her hands in terms of handstand, strict deficit or any type of handstand push-up workout. She's one of the best handstand walkers out there. Her strength is actually really comparable to Ariel's. I think what we have here in Alexis, maybe a younger, I wouldn't even say younger, because we think Ariel's so old, but she's not. She's still relatively young. She's 29 years old. But yeah. I know, but in terms of the perception and stuff like that. But Alexis, I think we're going to see the best version of Alexis. I think putting her at third is generous, and I think it's the safe play. Because I think what we're looking at Alexis is probably a future Games champion and future WFP champion.
This comment here.
That's one step too far. She's not going to win the games, nor she's going to win the World Fitness Project.
I said at future. I didn't say like this year.
How old is she?
26.
How old is Laura?
Laura, similar age, maybe a year or two older.
Okay, I have no further comment then.
2 years difference.
Yeah.
Who's older? Laura's older.
Laura's older. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe. How old's Gabby?
Gabby's similar. She's same age as Alexis.
Well, you get where I'm going with this. She's never gonna in no injuries, a full CrossFit Games season. She's never gonna beat Laura or Gabby.
Well, that's if Laura competes in a CrossFit Games season.
I get that. Yeah, but we're saying if she goes up against the best, she's gonna have to wait a few years for Tia until she gets 10 CrossFit Games victories, and then Laura's gonna maybe come back. But let's see. It's lots of ifs and buts. But Alexis in third, I completely agree. I think that's where she's gonna finish. I have someone else in second though.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing that. She has podiumed. It depends how much weight you put on the semifinals, but she finished second there, beating Emma Lawson, DB, Haley, Brooke, and a host of other good athletes. And she did podium at Wadapalooza. She's also, for whatever it's worth, she has had 2 back-to-back finishes at 2 very different CrossFit Games of 6th place. She has been hovering in that group of women that's threatening the podium. If she actually has her life and her health stuff kind of dialed in, that it seems like she has, I think Raptis is a very dangerous athlete in the women's field this year. It sounds like both PC and Nico agree.
One thing you failed to mention about the semifinals, though, is remember she finished second at that semifinal, but she wasn't with the top heats to start the weekend.
She had to do that out of heat number 3 on Saturday, and she had some pretty strong performances that day.
So imagine if she was in those top heats on that Saturday, where she might have. I'm not saying she would have beat Tia. I'm not saying that at all. But she still finished second. But so that's very impressive. That shows a lot of poise for her to not go down to the level of her competition in those heats. Nothing against those athletes in those heats, because she was competing with Fee and some other great athletes in those heats that had similar situations as her. But she showed a lot of just grit and determination. And I will also say, I will also say on behalf of Alexis, she's one of the few athletes here that have worn the leader jersey for more than one event at the CrossFit Games.
And look, she's also one of those she's one of those athletes where I don't think you're going to find anyone who's going to go, oh, I don't want her to win. She's so well liked in the whole field, and she's a genuinely nice person. And yeah, she's going to be competing. And could she take down an event? Sure. What if her perfect event shows up in Copenhagen? Oh, okay, maybe we'll put her in second. I still think there's leaps and bounds to Laura Horvath, but yeah, she's in the mix of best of the rest. I think it's called in Formula One.
I think obviously, she has a great team around her with Cooper Marsh and great people around her. But I think this season she has the potential to become a superstar, and I think the WFP season will help her with that.
Yeah,
if she can transcend the sport, and I think that's what's so cool about the WFP. It's more concentrated on the athletes and their personalities. I think, and we've seen that with Hiller. Hiller sat down with her. We got to know her and see how goofy she is, and I think she's very likable. I mean, she's a former teen athlete. She's very relatable. Great parents. I think she could be the next, girl next door in CrossFit. I mean, I can't really say if we've ever had that girl next door, athlete in CrossFit, but she certainly can do that with this season.
We'll move to the woman that I put fourth here. We already mentioned her a little bit, Ariel Lowen. She has had many good performances in the last 2 to 3 years, and then she had this little regression at Wadapalooza, which I'm going to kind of consider that similarly to Yona Kosi's semifinal last year as kind of not something that's really weighing her down in my mind. I still think that she's relatively competitive in the same echelon as she has been, and I'll open it up to these guys to let you know if they agree or not.
Well, she's one of those athletes where you keep let's see. And she just does it again and again and again and again. And we have to respect her performances. So putting her there is, until we've seen her, again, multiple times, falling off. Yeah, I totally agree. Having her in that mix, the podium chasers is completely where she needs to be. What does she do well? How does she end up on the podium at the games? I've seen her do it multiple times, and I still don't get it. She doesn't leave a lot of points on the table.
No, she doesn't. Patrick, you know Ariel quite well. Do you think she still has what it takes to threaten the podium against this field?
Because I like her and I enjoy her company and Dylan's company, I'm going to say no, that she doesn't. I'm saying that because she loves proving people wrong. So I'm doing reverse psychology here. Yeah, I think she's going to be on the podium, but I'm going to tell her that she's not. So that way she can throw it back in our faces. Like she's the perfect person. Like Brian, you've seen this more often than not, where you've rated her outside the podium, and she's like the nicest person putting it back in your face. Like and it's great. So that's why I'm gonna discount her, only because I don't believe that she's fourth or fifth or sixth. She's podium, and until she proves us wrong, I mean, yeah,
Nico, how do you? Nadine says compared to BKG here. How do you feel about that?
I was just about to say that. Like, I was trying to equate her to a male athlete, and I think BKG is that athlete in certain aspects.
Well, there's no athletic comparison between the two. BKG is Aizadagi, the best technical lifting CrossFitter we've ever seen, and also with gymnastics. Ariel is not. She's just a great CrossFitter. She does CrossFit well. She does nothing exceptional, but she does everything well. And she has no glaring holes, and that will, that's going to get you to the top 10, and sometimes it's going to get you to the podium. And she's capitalized on that, and she's a smart athlete. Obviously, being a mom, she's a little bit older, more mature. She just leaves points on the table. But yeah, I get the comparison, and it goes back to Sean Woodland, who time after time forgot BKG was in the field. But I totally get the comparison.
Maybe if you're looking for an old school women's comparison, you would say Val Vobel.
Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take that one even more. Yeah,
I would say her comparison on the men's, and a lot of people, I just say Justin Medeiros. Even though Justin's got 2 titles, but Justin does things well. I mean, there's not something you look at Justin like Justin just is bad at that, especially when he was peak Justin. Which it's crazy to say peak Justin. He's only 26 years old. But I would say that she's very similar in that aspect, that she's a great CrossFitter. There's not one glaring weakness. And that's how I feel about Justin.
Yeah.
We got in the article, I grouped Ariel with 3 other women. I'm going to list them off, and then I'm going to give basically Nico a chance to pick which one of these 3 women he likes best. Patrick will pick another one, and I'll talk about the third one, and we'll just kind of rotate it through that way. We had Emma Tall, Brooke Wells, and Danielle Brandon. Of those 3, Nico, who do you like best over the course of these 3 events this year?
Well, my second place pick isn't even in that conversation, but I'm going to pick Emma Tall. What I saw at Wodapalooza was kind of strange. Coming off I retire, and I can give Emma shit on that. She retires, and then she's back now doing World Fitness Project. And I'm happy for that, because why retire when you're that good? And she seemed happy at Wodapalooza. She seemed happy, dangerous. She was leading, obviously, going into the finals. I thought she was going to win the whole thing. But, dealing with some injuries at Wodapalooza. I think when people say they're dealing with injuries, we have to understand that most people are dealing with injuries throughout the year. Matt Fraser competed with a torn ACL and won the CrossFit Games. So, there's... You need to take that with a grain of salt. I like Emma. She could podium. She could take anywhere from 2nd to 7th. I think that's where I put her. And out of that group, if I was a betting man, I am. I'll bet on her.
Patrick, are you surprised at all to see Brooke Wells this high in my rankings?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I think she's top 5. I mean, I've been on the Brooke Wells train for a while. I think we were I mean, I don't think this is peak Brooke Wells. I think we were kind of cheated out of peak Brooke Wells when she didn't make the games, when she suffered that stress fracture. But I think what she's doing is I think she still has that level of fitness. She's still, and I think we saw that. We definitely saw that at Rogue. I was really impressed with a lot of things that she's doing. I think the programming that she's getting from then her coach Dick Marconi. I believe I don't know exactly. I believe she's still an HWPO athlete. I don't know who's coaching, if JR is still a part of that, but I think that's helping. I think having that familiarity with a training program that's playing more to her overall fitness than her strengths. We used to know Brooke as a sprinter / strong deadlifter. Wasn't really good at upper body pulling. She's still not the best at upper body pulling, but what we saw at Rogue was she did pretty impressive, I thought, in some of those events.
Yes, I'm not sure what the people are talking about with Rogue here. She finished 5th there.
Yeah.
She was competing sick in Miami, and I'm with Patrick here. I don't know if we've really seen the full breadth of what she has to offer since injuring herself 2 years ago. I think I'm making this pick based on expecting to see her at her best at these competitions and what I think the potential is if that's the case.
Yeah, I think so too.
Is she still will Horvath pace off? Do we know?
I don't know.
It's a good question.
I don't know. I'm struggling to keep up with that. All I know is I think she's still very good. I don't think we've seen her at her best since she hurt her elbow, and I'm hoping that we do. And if that's the case, I think she's right in the mix with these women.
Yeah, definitely. And she beat Emma obviously at Rogue. She's right up there. And she could, again, I'll put in the same echelon and say she can take anywhere from 2nd to 7th. And she also has home run potential. She has her certain events where she can do well. Rogue was a lot of up and down. And if you take away those two, what was it, 19th and 13th, something at Rogue, if you take away those two, and she closes those, it's not weaknesses, it's probably coming back off injuries. So if she shows up,
well, the worst finish by far was the log muscle up, which is like we've seen people who are really, really fit that just can't figure that out.
Right, but if she can show up 3 times in a row, all 3 competitions, and do well there, of course she is a podium threat. But she needs to stay healthy for the whole season. And obviously everyone wants to see people stay healthy, but she's had injuries. She's had quite a few, and we need to see it over the course of time. I'm not saying she's injury prone. The CrossFit Games, obviously terrifying injury, was a freak accident, and that happens. It's sport. So best of luck to her, and definitely think she's in that conversation.
In regards to HWPO they continue to like her posts. So, I take
I liked a post with Patrick Mahomes recently, so that's
you're not the training. I mean, you very rarely see that. You won't see. You don't see comp train liking Frazier's posts.
Well, that's not true, because she's also involved in Wild on Earth, the shoe brand that Matt Fraser and Matt O'Keefe is also involved in. So
that's different from HWPO.
The third woman that I had in this category is Danielle Brandon, and I feel like there's still just a huge contingency of people that are waiting for her to maybe have the type of breakthrough we saw from Alexis in Miami, and like get on a major podium and break out of this kind of middle to back of the top 10 placement that she somehow seems to always drift into. Do you guys see that as a possibility for her? Or do you like her kind of here in the back half of the top 10?
Brian, how I'm going to ask you, how are you justifying putting her in that conversation? Like based off what? It just, when has she been that good? It's been a while, hasn't it? If you go off data points and it's not looking like.
So I think I have to do this right now. Basically, Alex Kazan and Emma Lawson probably would have been 2nd and 3rd on my list overall if they weren't injured right now. So they're at 8 and 9, and they're at the back of this group of women for that reason. And therefore, if they were healthy, Danielle would actually be 9th, which I think is a lot more close to what you're asking me about. So we're going to talk about Alex and Emma in a second, but I think that will probably help clarify, not just for you, but for some other people.
I think she is not in the same conversation as the women we've talked about. She's just in the next category. Maybe she should kind of be in a category of her own. She obviously, the thing is, she can win events. There's events where before she takes the field of play, she's won it. Obviously, this is handstand walking. So if that shows up in Copenhagen, that's 200 easy points for her. But we've seen at Rogue, we've seen multiple times, she hasn't performed to her ability. She's changed coaches, which is never a good sign. I've never seen anyone like change a lot of coaches and then perform better and better and better. It's always consistency when it comes to that. But yeah, she needs kind of a comeback year. But maybe the pressure of not doing just one event. This is actually 4 events because Copenhagen is double. Maybe that lack of pressure because she has time to do a comeback. Maybe that will play in her favor. But
I should correct myself, by the way. She did podium last year at Wodapalooza. It was not a super deep field, but she beat Ariel Lowen at that final podium spot. And she was kind of nipping on the heels of Gabby that year. If anyone's not familiar, she's had several good performances at the games, but most notably was the 4th in 2022. So those would be like the 2 peaks that you could potentially look at in terms of high level competition finishes. But a lot of her other finishes, whether it's at Rogue or the games, are in that 8th to 12th, 7th to 11th sort of range.
Yeah. And I think that's where she is.
I'm okay with DB here. Like I said, I mean, this goes back to, Kotler. I remember when she was working with him, like, she's probably the most athletic woman I've ever seen. In terms of potential. Yeah, she's been dealing with some issues, but I think in terms of like injuries and then, I think she's back with the same coach. She's happier. She moved back down to Florida. It looks like she found a good training environment. She's closer to her coaches. I also think that she, for the first time in a long time, she looks healthy. I mean, I think I saw something where she was back squatting, was it 225, which was a weight that she was struggling with at Rogue, with back squatting that with ease not too long ago. Might have been a couple days ago. I was trying to find the post. So if she's healthy, I think by all means she's in contention for a top 5 spot. That's why I have no problem with her at 7. Yeah.
Can I just call bullshit on one thing you said? And it's not against Danielle, and it's not against Justin Kotler. Justin Kotler said she's the most athletic person he's ever trained with. That is correct. He said that. I heard that. What coach is going to go out and say, well, my athlete sucks? You're not going to see Matt Torres say, well, Dallin Peppers sure is a shitty athlete. Like coaches and managers, agents and managers are always going to go and sell their stock. So when a coach says someone is good, that is the least. It means nothing to me.
Well, it doesn't mean it to you, especially if you said. Of course, you're going to say that publicly. But I'm saying this like he said this like regular conversations. He would look at the gym. Remember, at the time, that gym had Bethany Shadburn. It had
Carrie Pierce
in there. Carrie Pierce.
Yeah.
Her, a young Alex Kazan, and he was like, Pat, I'm not lying to you. She's the most athletic person here. She has potential to win the games.
Let's move to Alex Kazan. She's comes in 8th on my list. If I was thinking that Alex Kazan was getting back to being healthy and ready to compete again at a high level. And then she kind of pulled out of Wodapalooza altogether, and she was posting that she was just now snatching again for the first time in a while. Yeah. So I just kind of grouped her in this group with Emma Lawson. I also made these rankings before Emma Lawson mentioned to the world that she had a herniated disc. I just knew that she was also dealing with some injuries. So these are the women that I have in 8 and 9. But if I knew that they were healthy, like I said, I'd probably have them 2 and 3 or 3 and 4 on this list. Nico, all things considered, what do you think about Alex Kazan?
Wait, Justin Kotler said Danielle was more athletic than Alex Kazan?
3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's when
she is the most athletic. She's the strongest woman in CrossFit. She's actually a better runner than people give her credit for. Look at the shoulders. She should just quit and do bodybuilding. But she has the potential, barring 3 perfect weekends, to compete with Laura. Obviously, right now she's injured. We don't know how big of a setback it is. Laura may also be injured. Injuries can happen over the season. If anyone was to beat Laura in any way, shape, or form, this would be my pick. I don't think anyone can, but she would be my pick to beat Laura. However, and there is a very big however, it's now March 5th, and we're 2 months and 2 weeks away from the first competition, and she just started snatching again. I'm looking at the snatch. It's still 135, or what is it, 125 she's snatching. She's going to get there, but what's the muscle memory going to look like? Is she ready for the volume of high rep competition? But I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried about her injury. I'm way more worried about Emma Lawson's injury. So
I want to take a second, Nico. I want to take a second here because these people are asking about your claim that she's the strongest, and I'm going to back you up here. So they're saying who? Okay, he's high. Laura and Tia stronger.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Not even close.
And here's what we have to consider. Yes, now finally, Lynn. How come I can't click on this? Her numbers are higher than everyone in, like, suddenly I can't click on these comments, but in bodybuilding, and she specifically mentions, Jesus, what?
We measure in CrossFit, this is still CrossFit. We have something called CrossFit Total, which she's great at. She's great at squatting. She's the best at deadlifting, and she's by far the best at bench pressing, but then it's going to be strict pressing. So all sort of pressing, she's better than anyone else. Deadlifting, she is. Maybe she's better. Okay, then we have squatting.
Beat them all at the Rogue Invitational, and they were
Danny Spiegel can give her a run for her money on squatting, obviously, but that's one thing.
Olympic lifts is a combination of 2 or 3 things that are on the 10 general physical skills for CrossFit, and that would be speed, power, and strength. And Nico is not talking about Olympic lifting. He understands that she's not going to win Olympic lifting total. He's talking about raw strength. And I think that I wanted to do this because I think this is a good opportunity for a reminder of an education piece.
Well, a powerlifting meet. If they just did a straight up powerlifting meet, there's no doubt that Alex Kazan would take first place.
Right.
And Gima Harris probably wouldn't take first place.
Yeah, I don't know about on the men's side. That'd be a fun one. Maybe it'll show up. But Kazan is super strong, super fit, super high potential, incredible with some very specific skills. And look, the snatch, I don't know. The thing is that if it's just a snatch, then that I'm not confident in with her, then you could say back to me, well, it was just a clean with Lucy and you put her second. So what's wrong with you? But I just don't know where Alex is at. We haven't seen any competitive data points. The field is so good. So I'm basically taking a safe way out here and saying, if she's not healthy, she's middle of the pack against this field. And also acknowledging that if she is, I think she's a serious podium contender.
But if she's not healthy, she could be 20th. So that's like, it's I get what you're saying, but then again, like if she's not healthy, I'm putting her 20th.
But I mean, at this point, what I'm assuming is she's planning to compete in these events, and that if she competes there, not at 100%, she can still finish in the top 10.
Yeah.
Let's move to Emma Lawson at 9. Like I said, I didn't know that it was a herniated disc. I did know that she was dealing with some problem, but I mean, look, she also was on a team that won in Wodapalooza, and she looked pretty good to me. I didn't really know what to do with
her. Do we have any sort of like update on her herniated disc? Do we know where it is?
Was this the woman that you had number 2?
No, it's Alex Kazan.
Okay, it was Kazan. Where did you have Lawson?
What Lawson? Is it 2022 Lawson or 25 Lawson or 2023? Sorry. It kind of depends. I've seen her go toe-to-toe with Tia Clay Toomey, and I've seen her get the best of Tia in events. And she was on a team, but I'm not putting anything to the team competition of Wodapalooza. That is great athletes all across the board. And
well, the point for me is that differently from Gazan, we actually saw her out there doing all the things that were required to be on a team that could eventually win in a fairly competitive field, regardless of how it parallels with an individual competition. She was out there doing this stuff.
I need to see her be back in her old, it's weird to say, she's so young, and her old self. She was 17 when she had the Leaders jersey. I'm pretty sure she's the youngest one to ever wear the Leaders jersey. I would suspect so. Regardless, she is okay. But yeah, right. And so she was like that next generation of, oh, we're gonna see Emma Lawson, Emma Carey, and obviously the wonder child Mel O'Brien go toe to toe. Now we only have one left, and she doesn't seem to be where she was a few years ago. Then again, herniated disc at that age, that reminds me of Janikowski with like the early injuries, maybe pushing way too far,
or even Matt Fraser in his weightlifting career. Right,
Matt was done. Like he was, everything was
he didn't know if he'd ever lift the barbell again.
No. So is she taking the right steps? I hope she is, and I expect her to be. But she's one of those where I need to see it, but I'm ready to change my mind quickly and put her in anywhere from second place. But then again, if the trajectory keeps going, I'm ready to put her even further down. But I know I'm a huge cop out for me, but I need to see more.
With an athlete like this, it kind of has to be. There's just too many unknowns. One thing we do know is that for whatever reason, she's not doing the CrossFit Games season this year. She is focused on the WFP season, and if she's doing what she needs to do to make sure she's healthy for these 3 weeks of the year, then we can keep her in the conversation as being dangerous and relevant. Patrick, overall, how do you feel about Lawson this year in the WFP?
I think she's being very smart, very calculating. I think this is an injury that's been bothering her for a while now. I think her electing to do the team event is more of the idea of knowing that those team events, she's going to do less work, and plus those aren't going to do anything to re-aggravate it. If anything, it would be just like almost like a training session for her. However, that could be something. I mean, we look at something like someone like Bethany Flores, who she's been dealing with back injuries, or even someone like DB. Now, granted, DB wasn't a herniated disc as far as we know, but a herniated disc it can become very laboring, and it does affect how she breathes. I think she's being smart. I think her choosing not to do the game season, I don't think it has anything with her making a stand. I think it was just like she just wasn't ready to do the open. And and I think having another 2 months to train to get healthy before the start of the WFP season is a lot better for her. And plus, if she doesn't do good in the first WFP event, she still has 2 other shots to kind of do well. And I think now she's just competing. I don't think she's, this is she knows that this field is very, very good. And when she's healthy, she's amongst the best. So it's just her testing herself out this year and seeing what she can get away with. It's no different than, I think, an athlete, a football player who's just trying to work their way through like a twisted ankle, not necessarily a sprained ankle, but a twisted ankle. Tape that thing up, go out there and win one for the team. I think that this is, if anything, this season will be more of a mental test than anything for her.
I don't know. I mean, obviously she did she did amazing a few years ago. She took 16th at the games. I know some people are going to discount the CrossFit Games, but it just seems like she got very famous very fast. And this would not be the first time in sports where we've seen someone get very famous very fast. And it not talking CrossFit, I'm talking all sports. We can go back to Mike Tyson, 40 million in one fight. That whole thing ruined his career. And we've seen that multiple times. Not saying her career is ruined. I'm just saying fame, attention, money changes people. And can she go back to that level? Remains to be seen.
Patrick, you mentioned Bethany Flores a couple times now. I ended up putting her 10th here. I kind of had her in this little mini tier with Emily Rolfe, but it was at the start of what I called the next up, the group of women that goes from 10 through 15 that I feel like are kind of, if things don't go well with Lawson, don't go well with Gazan or whoever, anyone else that's ahead of there, they're just they're going to be the ones that take those spots coming up. I'll just say this. I feel like it would be easy to put Bethany Flores a lot lower down on this ranking, and you probably wouldn't take too much flack for it. But man, dude, she's, despite not really being able to train with the same weight intensity as almost anyone else on this list, she just consistently still doing well. And I feel like she's got what it takes just from an athletic and competitive experience standpoint to be right in the middle of this group of 20.
I've heard a lot of good things about her training. That I don't think she'll ever be at the point where she's training with heavy weight or doing anything. But what I'm hearing now is that she's training regularly. That she's not spending 2 hours to warm up or to stretch. That she takes half that time now because her back and mainly her back is not I don't think it'll ever be 100%. I just think it's to the point now where it's manageable and she knows that she can work around it. But I'm hearing really good things coming out of her regarding her training and how she's looking right now. And I agree with you. I mean, it's brought up so many times. We were kind of cheated in 2021 of seeing the best of Bethany Flores, where I think all of us can agree that a lot of us put her on the podium. But obviously COVID and other things factored in, and I think what she's done over the last 2 years has been amazing, and the way she's handled it with style and grace, it shows a lot about her maturing as an athlete and as a person, and just letting things come to her, and whether she failed or not. I mean, we saw at Rogue when she didn't even lift. When she was having fun, she would put like 10 pounds on there and clean it, and she was clapping and laughing, and she knows what she is, and I think an athlete like her, to know what type of athlete she is and not trying to do too much, but the things that she's good at, she's better than other people. When it comes to rope climbs, she's one of the best when it comes to the echo bike. And, she has so many great aspects and levels of fitness that some of these other athletes aren't even close to touching.
Yeah, obviously 2021 was that year where everything was going in the right direction, and she got pulled from the CrossFit Games. I was actually there when she tested positive, which was kind of it was devastating to see. Strange year. Yeah. But I think she's in the right spot. And like we talked about last week, once we get down here, there's just more anomalies. There's just more data, more stuff to be factored in, and putting it. I don't see her breaking that top 8. Could she move up a spot? Sure. Could she go down a few spots? Sure. Same with Emily Rolfe, we're going to talk about in a second. But yeah, I think she's pretty correctly set there, and I don't think people are going to lose their shit over her in 10th place. I think we're going to see that in a few spots. Someone's going to be angry about that.
Okay, let's go to Emily real quick. I mean, Emily Rolfe she's now she's past the Masters threshold, and she's into this kind of group of women that we've seen throughout the still young sport of competitive fitness. Sam Briggs, probably the torchbearer in this regard, that have proven the ability to maintain competitive elite fitness past 35, 36 years old. There's always this, like, it has to drop off at some point, but I still think she's.
It has.
She's hit. I mean, look. Well, she got third at the games this year. She did podium in Dubai a couple years ago, but I think that those were kind of the blips, the high points that we'll see, and that this is kind of where she's at right now, and that just based on the fact that Father Time never loses, that it's just going to go down from here, and it's of no fault of her own.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say about that. I think she's pretty where she should be. Yes, she did take third of the games, perfect programming for her, and then again, Wodapalooza was a very different programming for her, and she took some major hits there. I believe she finished 10th at Wodapalooza.
She's been 10th, 9th, and 9th the last 4 years at Wodapalooza.
Yeah, it's not her event per se. She did well in the team competition though, so there's that. She's up against a tough field, and I don't really see her, other than her aerobic capacity, obviously, which also isn't in a tier of her own, which has been back in the day. It just isn't anymore. So I see her having a hard time, and I could actually drop her a few spots without feeling too bad about it.
Well, let's take a look at the next couple women. I ended up, I think, putting Maddie Sturt in a group just by herself right here in 12. I was like bargaining with myself to try to find a reason to put her higher than this. She had kind of, I think, maybe caught some people's attention at Rogue as she was having some like pushing into the 6th, 7th place, but she ended up regressing towards the end of that competition to 10th. I still think it was a great showing for her overall. You know, I think that we've spoken about it many times, Patrick, that her and Jay both seem to be, you know, in this really kind of beautiful spot in their careers where they have a new coach and training environment that they seem to be thriving in. They have a ton of competitive experience, but they're not that old yet. What do you think, you know, about this pick? I'll start with Patrick, and also what is the top end potential for her throughout these 3 touring events?
I like the spot at 12 for her, but I think top end potential is maybe top 8 or in, you know, as far as 8. It all depends. I mean, it all depends how quick she adapts to and what the workouts are. I think what we saw at Rogue was when, especially that last event, she was very, very unfamiliar with the sandbag clean. When I mean, that's something you don't see at many competitions, especially semifinals. She got to see it at Rogue, and it's a heavy sandbag clean. So I think she really struggled with adapting to that. However, having Tia and Shane, who are probably the best at preparing athletes, I think that's going to help her adapt even. You know, I think that's a problem with her. And I think Jay had that issue too, but I think Jay's made a quicker adjustment to that. But I think Maddie's now finally learning that, how to adapt on the fly, how to deal with some of the odd object type stuff, because that's something she's normally not used to seeing because she's more of a semifinal regional type athlete when you don't see stuff like that. So, you know, it all depends on what they do. WFP, if they're going to be odd object driven or pure CrossFit or functional fitness. But I think either way, she's not going to have the disappointments that we saw at Rogue. I think she'll just be better prepared.
Well, why is Shane the best at preparing athletes, other than he had the Michael Jordan of CrossFit, the Michael Jordan, LeBron, and Kobe Bryant combined? Who else?
It's a fair question, but I want to let's keep it in the athletes. I do still want to try to finish this up.
Also, you're matching jerseys, PC, with Maddie Stewart.
That's a dude. I saw this picture and I was like, damn, that is a really, really clean pick.
There's a story behind why they wear pink on Saturdays at Torian Pro. A really unfortunate story, but it's really cool how they Torian keeps it going every year.
Next up on the list, I had a group of 3. They are Haley Adams, Paige Semenza, and Sydney Wells. We'll take them in order. I know there has been a lot of pushback on Haley in the comments here today. Also on the Instagram post, there were some people asking about that. I'll give my justification in a second, but Nico, do you think this is too high, too low, or just right?
The problem is I'm going to disagree with you and then agree with you. But Haley Adams 7 months ago took 4th place, 5th place at the CrossFit Games. She has she's been to the CrossFit Games numerous times, cracked the top 10 numerous times. She's won events at the CrossFit Games.
Better than that. 5 times in the CrossFit Games. 9th place is her worst finish. She's been 6th, 4th, 5th, 5th, and 9th.
So 9th place is the worst finish. Yet now she's going to finish 13th at World Fitness Project. However, I woke up Friday morning and I put on YouTube and I saw the open announcement. And I don't know what I was watching. Like, did she want to be there? Did she not want to be there? It was like I was watching with someone else and she was looking like, what's going on with her? And I'm like, I don't know. She's really fit and really good at burpees and this sort of bodyweight stuff, but she wasn't. So maybe that was just a once-off. Maybe she's not really interested in the CrossFit Games season. Why then do an open announcement? I'm not really sure. She's mayhem. Maybe it's just something she had to do for sponsors or whatever. I kind of agree because I'm not sure if she has any fire in her. I know Facundo is going to give me pushback, but that's fine. If she is firing at all cylinders, she needs to be in a conversation for, first of all, top 10. And then after that, she needs to be in a conversation for the top 5, because the more events there is, the more we're going to see her biggest weaknesses, which is, of course, pulling from the floor, but also heavy squatting, especially in a front rack position. That is going to be less important. And maybe we're going to see some cool running events in Copenhagen. And she's going to take 200 points there. So I get the pick, but hopefully she still wants to be there. And she said she was in an off season at the open announcement. Sure, there is no off season in CrossFit. I'm just gonna any given time, Matt Fraser, Rich Froning is always in shape. We saw Rich.
Well, I mean, let's just say, like we saw the men and the women all do that workout over the course of whatever number of days it was ago. And the top scores were very comparable, men to women, on that workout. And the top athletes were not just short athletes and not just tall athletes. There was the top athletes all filtering to the top. And she didn't do it.
It's not even the score. It was her, the way she looked. She just didn't seem like she wanted to do it. And she was moving slowly. She was moving inefficiently. I
want to ask Patrick a question here.
Yeah.
Patrick, you've seen Haley come through her competitive career from when she was young all the way up to now, and all the ups and downs associated with it. And when we knew Haley back in the day, when she was 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, I mean, I was afraid of her. Like, she was just intense and serious and ferocious and committed, and like, she did not accept losing, and she did not accept anything from herself if not her best. And it drove her into a place where she needed to take a step back. She needed to reevaluate. She needed to kind of find a different sort of balance in her life. And I think she's in the process of doing that still. Well, she's clearly much happier. She's clearly much more confident. Some of the things, the risks that she's taking, speaking publicly, singing publicly, smiling on the floor, despite being in a position where other people might find it embarrassing because she can't do what the other girls are doing. And she's been rolling with those punches, it seems like, personally and also in professional settings in terms of competition. But when you're talking about trying to compete over the course of 3 events for a pro card against this level of caliber of field, and a lot of the other women are still able to tap into that killer mode, to borrow Nadine's term here, is that something that you think can be still an advantage for Haley, or is it something that is going to keep her potentially out of that competitive top 5, 6 category that we saw her a few years ago?
That's a really good question. There's many layers to that. I think what it is, it's ultimately what Haley wants to do. I mean, I saw the same things you did, Nico, but for me, it was a little bit different because I know the journey that she's been through. And it's one of those things where the reason why she's back in Cookville now, she's back around Rich. Rich has been and Facundo has been with her the whole time. And all they're trying to do is to let her have fun, enjoy everything, enjoy the moment. You don't have to, because that was the biggest knock on her. Like Rich would even say, it's like he would get mad because he would go in the barn and she was there. It's like, all right, let's program a workout. And if Rich beat her on her, you're like, okay, program some, she's got to beat him or something. And I think what she's a much more humble person, and she realizes there's life outside of CrossFit. She's still very fit, and she's just going to take it as it comes. She's just going to kind of go as a flow. She kind of almost takes, her attitude now kind of reminds me of Alex Kazan. Well, you don't see too much bother Alex. Alex is kind of just like, I call her the hippie queen, hippie queen in CrossFit, where it's just like she goes with the flow. I think Haley's the same way. I think she's got a great environment around her that will help her with that. But it's not letting her bother her. If you look at the semifinals, the women that beat her in the semifinals were Alexis Raptis, Emma Lawson, Tia, I believe Shelby Neal finished ahead of her.
And DB.
These are all women outside of Shelby Neal and Tia. You have ranked ahead of her in this field, and right behind her was Wells and Paige Spencer. Yeah. So I think where you're putting her, and we can debate all. I think there is no debate. That East field is probably the closest thing you can have to WFP. That's what I look at. And I look at the WF field and I look at the East semifinal. It's very similar. I think.
I mean, so is the Rogue field. And we know that there's things at Rogue that she's not going to be great at.
Rogue is very niche.
Well, but I mean, look, she had 5 finishes of
Mhm.
15th or worse against that field. Not all of those are back squatting for a heavy load.
Sure.
So there's clearly some things that can pop up that can hurt her. And she had 1 top 5 finish. So she's also not showing that propensity for banking the big points that many of the other women we talked about are. I don't want to
Yeah.
stay on go ahead,
No.
finish up.
Well, you know how I said Maddie, like 12 was kind of like her ceiling, and then like she can go as far
8 to
as high
12, yeah.
high 8. I think Haley Adams, this is her ceiling, or whatever, the basement, whatever you want to call
Floor
it.
would be the
But, yeah, her
Yeah.
floor. And I think her ceiling is much more greater than Maddie Sturt, and that's based on her history and depending on programming. But I think Haley, 13th is probably where you have her now. But I think she can easily become a podium contender. And I don't think there's many athletes in the field after 10 that you can say that about.
No, and I mean, just to put it, because you guys didn't mention it up earlier, but like Bethany had the same number of points at her at the games. Emily had more points than her at the games. Those were a long amount of tests. Emily beat her by 4 spots at Rogue. Like, it's not a totally crazy ranking, and I am
No.
very well aware of her proclivity in her past to have top 5 and 6 finishes. Definitely not saying that she cannot have a top 10 finish, but I think that just based on some things from 2, 3, 4 years ago, people are still, and I did this a little bit when she was first coming back, are still thinking that she is one of the top 5 or 6 fittest. And I haven't seen that in this new version of Haley. I think overall, this is a better version of Haley as a person. And I've been super proud and impressed by her. But I think that I really feel like this is appropriate.
But that's not what we're talking about.
No,
Everyone agrees on we want to see her happy and healthy. Like, that's not even a discussion.
Yeah,
but we're talking about sports. We're talking about sports.
Yes.
Michael Jordan hated the NBA when he played 15 seasons. We're only talking about her athletic performance. We're not talking about how she feels, looks, or what she does for the community. We can all agree on that. And we put her up there. What she did at Wadapalooza was great. We're just talking about after she came back, she's just not as good as she was prior.
Next up on the list, another athlete who I think has caught some people's attention this year. She did have we just mentioned her coming in just behind Haley at the semis, beating her at Rogue, 9th place at the games. PC, you're a huge fan of Paige Semenza. How do you feel about her at 14?
I think it's appropriate. She's one of those, when you talk floor ceiling, I think she's one of those athletes, like her ceiling's 10, her floor is probably like 15. It all depends on programming with her. She's probably, in terms of if there was we talk about toughness and grit that like Bethany has. I think Paige, obviously with her background and playing hockey at Ohio State, she enters all that. And I think what we're doing is, we're seeing every year like a better version of Paige. She's the only athlete that I can think of that has proved her spot at the games every year she's been there, to the point where now she's top 10. And that's regardless of what the other factors were in play. You can only compete against the people who are there, and she does that, and she does it quietly. She does it, and I just think that Paige.
That's a notable stat. I don't want to just glance over that. This is dating from 2018 all the way from this year. She started in the 30s, 32nd, and she hasn't made it every year, but every year she's competed, she's improved all the way up to 9th. It's a big climb over a significant period of time.
You don't see that. You don't see that over a long length of career. Usually, if you're at the top, you see them, digressing. And if you see an athlete improve, it's usually for a short time span.
I know it's not exactly the same trajectory because she hasn't reached the same heights. And in this example, there was one blip in 2020, which he will also acknowledge was not representative of his overall fitness, but it's a similar type of trajectory to Jeff Adler's career, starting in the back or middle of the top competitors in the world and chipping away as they go. And I think that both Paige and Jeff have had a very responsible approach to incorporating the base foundation of methodology that CrossFit has educated us all on into their competitive careers.
Yeah, you hit that right on the button. She might be one of only a handful of athletes that has their L2. She coaches classes, she lives a methodology, and then on top of it, just like Jeff. And I know people are like, well, Jeff won the games and blah, blah, blah. But look at Paige has been with Misfit from day one, whereas other athletes, and she's improved. Whereas other athletes, after 2 or 3 years, they would probably jump ship and go somewhere else to see if they can make.
Was that an intentional choice of terminology?
I know. Right when I said jump ship, I was like, well, yeah. But Paige, I mean, I think it shows you that CrossFit at its core, and if you follow the tenets, it works. It works, and stick with what you know and who knows you the best, and she's done that.
Yeah.
The last woman I had in this group comes in at 15 on this list. It's Sydney Wells. And I would say that I do think that there's some room for people to give me some pushback on this and potentially say that she deserves to be higher. I spent a lot of time wrestling with that myself. Do either of you guys feel like the trajectory that Sydney's been on over the last couple of years warrants a higher placing than this?
I'd be fine if you like did a coin flip and swap her with Paige Mensa or who was in 13, not Haley. I wouldn't put her above Haley. She's in that mix. She has some holes, but programming matters, and the lower we get in the field, the program is going to matter more and more.
Maybe she finished right between Semenza and Haley at Rogue, so it seems like a good group to me.
Right, and she had, but then again, she had a 5, a 5, and a 6. So she can kind of, she maybe has a ceiling that's higher. I think 15th. I think that's her floor probably, maybe 16. But she has a ceiling when she can jump a few spots. Then again, she's still young and she has been improving every year. So will that continue? Will that continue relative to the field? That would be interesting to see. But I think you have a pretty dead on.
I think competition age is really important when you look at someone like Sydney. I still say this, and I said it yesterday. I think the best thing that happened to Sydney was her not making the semifinals this year, because what it did is it gave her kind of a step back and kind of improve on a lot. And she didn't have to worry about games training or semifinals training. She was training a lot on her weaknesses, and you've seen that. Yes, she will never probably be the best at ring muscle ups, but now she can string them pretty consistently. And and I'm seeing her get stronger. I mean, we saw what she did at the complex at Wadapalooza. I mean, I think she lifted more than Brooke did. Which is, you probably wouldn't have imagined that would happen on a complex like that.
Well, she also beat Brooke overall on the leaderboard.
Yeah, she's just a different athlete than Brooke. I mean, there's that comparison, but I think Sydney, she's a more natural athlete, and she's picking up on a lot of things quicker than Brooke did, because Brooke started so earlier, and she might have developed some bad habits, where Sydney's learning all that, kind of brand new. And I think Sydney has a lot of upside. And Brian, you know how I like to group these athletes. There's a certain athlete with another athlete that we're going to talk about later. There, I call them it's like Haley, Sydney, Emily Rolfe, and then the next athlete we're going to talk about. I always group them together. And I think Sydney and the other athlete we're going to talk about probably have the most upside because of their ability to pick up and get stronger. I don't think Emily and Haley had that ability to get any stronger. Haley tried, but Haley realized that's not who she is. Whereas Sydney and the other athlete, they are getting stronger, and they have the ability to get stronger.
Are you talking about Amy?
I don't know who you're talking about. You mean this person? Yes.
That's move on.
It's like so funny that you just keep calling her the other athlete. Amy Kringle, I would say, captivated people's attention at the semifinals last year. She did end up putting herself, when you looked at the European semifinal last year, I think everyone was saying, okay, we have Laura and Gabby, we have Emma Tall and Karen Freyova. Well, maybe not everyone was on both of those women, but it would make sense to be. And then there was Amy Kringle that basically just put herself into the 5 slot, separated from the rest of the women in Europe. She had a decent performance at the games. Granted, we know that some of the field was missing, but if we think about that, like, she went from 17th in her first 2 attempts at the games to finishing 9th this year. Maybe there's 4 or 5 women that, if everything had played out as normal, would have beaten her anyway. So I'm not sure that she's really shown the propensity to be in the top 10 of an elite field like this yet. I do agree with Patrick that I think she's moving in the right direction, but I think we got to give her another year or 2, or see it from her before we attribute that potential to her.
Yeah, definitely. She She has no her competition age is super young, maybe one of the youngest in the field we have. So therefore, we have a lot of way less data points on her. But I wouldn't be surprised if she's someone who could maybe she's going to stay there. Maybe she's going to take 17th, and maybe she is evolving in like she has been the last couple of years. But there's a very big difference between evolving from being an open athlete to a semifinal athlete to a games athlete, and then jumping once you're in that top 20, then making those jumps. Though some people never make those jumps, but maybe she can.
I
I'm
did
not
just
sure.
want
I
to
think
acknowledge that this is the first woman in the last section on the article they wrote, which is called Something to Prove. And I think that for different reasons, all the women in this category should feel that way about where I ranked them, but also could be assessed that way based on the lack of experience, or in some cases, the experience that we've seen from them.
Yeah.
And I was one of the few people that was like, hey, watch out for Amy Kringle. I think that she's onto something here. She kind of proved that at semifinals. I think what happened at the games is, if you look at her, she just wore down. She wasn't used to a 4-day, 5-day competition like that. I mean, she started off at the 21st, then went 10th, 3rd, 5th, and then she kind of fell off after that. At one point, she was in the top 10. She finished with the 25th and the 27th, 19th and the 21st. I think what she needs to do is just get used to that competition. I think that's what the WFP season will do, because even though it's like a 3-day competition, there's numerous of them. So she's going to prepare. Her coach, Frazier, is going to have her well prepared for this as well. So I see a lot of upside in Amy Kringle. And like I said, her, Sydney Wells, Haley Adams, Paige Mendes all have something to prove, even though they shouldn't.
In the next grouping is 17 and 18. I think I have Danny Spiegel and then Olivia Kerstetter, both women from the United States. Obviously, both women got their invites following Wodapalooza this year, or at least that's when we found out about them. And those are similarities. The big difference is huge amount of competition experience in the elite level for Danny Spiegel, and continuing to gain it at a very young age for Olivia Kerstetter. We'll start with Spiegel. Look, when it comes to Spiegel, we've seen the highs. We know the highs. We know the event win potential is there. She's had some of her best competitive finishes at Rogue. She's been very consistent amongst the top women in the sport, meaning she can qualify for and be at the big competitions. She rarely pushes into a top 5 conversation. Even into the top 10 is unusual for her, but there's obviously a huge fan base. 17 for Spiegel. Fair assessment here, Nico?
No, it's even crazier than Lucy Campbell. How on earth did you get this number? She just competed against an even stronger field, because we have Gabrielle Magawa and Tia Clay-Toomey at Rogue, and she took 7th. Then she competed at Wodapalooza. I'm gonna kind of indict myself a little bit, because she took what did she take there?
6th
at Water 6. Sorry. So and now she's in a field and takes 17th. However, programming matters, and I've said that multiple times.
Just to let people know, in Spiegel's competed at Wodapalooza 5 times. In 2024, the programming was changed dramatically, and she finished 19th. The other years she's competed there, she's been 5th, 2nd, and 6th. So she's kind of the antithesis of Emily Rolfe. Like, that is her competition.
Well, she has home run potential, though, and she's gonna get event wins over the course of 3 weekends. She's gonna get an event win, and that just
it's a little funny. It's a little funny because I think on paper most people would think Spiegel would do better at Rogue, but in her 4 career appearances at Rogue, she averages a 9th place finish as opposed to a 4th at Wodapalooza.
Well, those are longer competitions.
And she's gonna take last place in some events. If there's like a lot of running or long endurance, and she's a very compartmentalized athlete, and she does some things very well, but 17.
But then we have to look at her games finishes. Her average games finishes in the 20s. She's withdrawn twice from that competition, and what I'm getting at here is that but even on the years that she hasn't, 26th, 13th, 17th, so this average is kind of around that 2017 neighborhood. I don't know, man. I just think that Patrick hit it on the head. Like, this is over the course of 4,000 points. We know she's going to have some big ones. We know she's going to have some small ones. But the longer the competition, generally speaking, the worse she does.
But it's been a while since she's competed at the CrossFit Games. She kind of competed in 2024, but then we'll go back to 2023. And that goes against what you said earlier. Like, you don't want to talk about Haley Adams because you're talking about stuff from 2023. So, like,
fair enough. So you're going to say that the last 2 competitive data points we have, she's been extremely good against similar women. I think it's totally
and I think she has a ceiling. Perfect programming, put the right events in Copenhagen. She has the ability to crack the top 10. However, worst possible programming, I could see her fall down to 12, 13, 14. But yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Patrick, big discrepancy there between me and Nico. Where do you fall when it comes to Spiegel? I mean, I think it's worth asking.
I think between 12 and 17. You know, a lot of those athletes ahead of her, she hasn't beaten in a even 3-day competition. Remember, this is someone who didn't qualify on semifinals. You know, when CrossFit was programming, doing all the programming, so it was programmed across the whole board. So if you compare how she did it at the semifinals against the whole field, you know, she would have finished a lot worse. I mean, she didn't make the games that year for whatever reasons there were. But the thing is, you know, I think the longer competition goes around,
and there were reasons. I mean, she had chosen to do that thing in Saudi Arabia. Clearly, you know, will have that kind of travel will have an impact on a fairly critical weekend.
I will say the Danny Spiegel that I saw at Rogue, and you look at this picture right here. I mean, that's one of the fittest versions of Danny I've seen in a long time, and you know. Yeah, she can stay healthy because I think she is dealing with some maybe possible injuries here or there. I think just based on competition age and the amount of squatting she does and the volume that she does. I mean, the girl loves to train. She trains all the time. So yeah, but I think between 12 and 17, I'm not too upset with this pick. Maybe she might be, but I think at the end of the day, she's doing what she wants to do. She's one of the people that was advocating for something like a league. She was a big fan of sanctionals. She was a big proponent about professionalization of the sport. So she finally got her way. So we'll see what she does with it now.
Patrick, you coming to Copenhagen in December?
I would love to be. I'm trying to.
Okay. Over under. I'm gonna go over 13th place. You want to bet a beer?
Definitely.
Okay, Brian.
Hold on. Wait.
Write it down.
Is this against these 20 athletes or against the entire field?
Entire field.
Entire field.
Okay.
If she takes 13th, I win. Anything lower than that, you win?
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, that's between you guys. The other woman I put in this category, Olivia Kerstetter, obviously super young still, has had some very, very impressive moments in competition, doesn't have a lot of the same competition data points as a Danny Spiegel, who's been doing it against elite fields for 5-6 years consistently now. Thoughts on Kerstetter, PC?
I mean, I really don't have many. I mean, she's again home run potential. You know, she's a college student, so I don't know how this plays into, like, you know, she's going to school, I believe, at the University of Arkansas. But I mean, I don't know how this kind of plays into it. I mean, is CrossFit her life, or is being a student a life? Is this a hobby? Is it not a hobby? I mean, it's getting when alcohol is involved. True. So I mean, I can see Olivia being in this place. I mean, we haven't seen much from her since she was named Rookie of the Year at the games 2 years ago. You know, she definitely has the ability. We saw it semifinals this past year with, you know, there's certain workouts that she's in her wheelhouse and that she's going to win. She's going to be better than anyone in the world. But I think there's just too many other things that she still struggles with, and maybe she just doesn't have the time to shore them up right now. I think the best version of Olivia Kerstetter will be after she finishes college. Kind of like some of these other athletes have done in the past, where, I mean, we look at someone like George Sterner. I think that's a perfect example. But as long as she maintains her fitness, a level of fitness, and I don't think she'll ever lose that strength. That's just what she's good at. But yeah, I have no problem with her 18th. I don't see her again going any higher than 15th. But you know, yeah.
Yeah,
Nico, nothing. I think
no,
pretty similar assessment. We know about her. And yeah, I think that what Patrick said, the one probably thing that caught my attention the most is, if we like we were talking about Alexis Raptis a while ago. Alexis had not the same level of success, but some success as a teenager. She's talked about it publicly before that she went into kind of this dark period where she wasn't as relevant, but she did some other stuff, stayed active, stayed fit, and then early 20s building towards mid 20s, we see what she's done. So there could potentially be a trajectory like that. Who knows? Maybe George Sterner is about to do the same thing. So 19th on the list, I have Manon Angonis. Ironically fit. This is my wild card mystery athlete. I love her vibe and I want to see her do well. Manon is such a fascinating case study. She's basically massively outperformed herself at Rogue compared to everywhere else. She didn't make the games this year. She didn't do well the games the year she made it, but she's done Rogue.
Did she even compete that game in 2023? She didn't even compete, did she? Or did she withdraw? 2023? Did she compete?
She competed at the games in 2023. She finished 35th, and she was just never out of the bottom heat.
Right.
And then last year she finished 15th in Europe, as I mentioned, but she consistently makes it to Rogue through the qualifier and has finished 11th, 10th, and 9th there. You can't ignore that, but at the same time, like we know that, like we've been talking about some of these other athletes, and we can say you could put some stock into what they do in Rogue. It's not everything. Same with Wodapalooza. Same with the semifinal. I don't know. I'm kind of with Ironically Fit here. Like I think Manon is a super cool person. She clearly has some athletic potential. She's strong, but I don't know. I don't know how to justify putting her ahead of many women on this field.
No, me neither. She does great in qualifiers. I'm not going to put too much emphasis on the qualifiers because, as we saw, her first attempt on the Open was terrible and mostly no reps. Same with Austin Hatfield, who got, he did it in the live announcement, and we saw the same with Guy Mejeros, which is worst case. So qualifiers is what it is, and it's a weird thing, but it's part of our sport. We have to accept it. I've seen her at some point. I believe she could be a top 10 athlete in the world. Obviously, I'm biased, and she was at that time coached by Andre Houdet. But I saw some potential, but it was like it never really got past that threshold. Right now I need to see something else. I don't feel like I have a data point.
Yeah, I mean, 4th place 2023 Dubai was pretty good. She's been in that. She did have 7th at the European semifinals that same year. But yeah, I mean, I feel like she's just like hovering, and if she doesn't have a breakthrough, then she's probably going to be in a battle to maintain a pro card next year.
I compare her to, and Nico, you'll appreciate it. I compare her to kind of a system quarterback. Like she has to be in the right programming for her to do well in. And right now, Rogue programming does well. Like the games, who knows? If there would have been no cuts, maybe she wouldn't finish in the back half because some of her better events were later on. But that's not. You got to play what's given to you, the cards that are given to you. That's why I think she's had some success at Rogue and at some of these other events. She has competition experience. So she's competed at some of the biggest competitions in the world. So it has nothing to do with the games. I think it just has to do with it comes down to programming and her being a part of that system. That's why I call her like a system quarterback. She may not be, you just plug and play her, but it has to be the right system.
Right. And people call Tom Brady a system quarterback. So, there's that.
I didn't say that. I never said
that. But people did that for a decade. But yeah.
They did. But no, he was a perfect quarterback for that system. There's a difference.
He's kind of good in temper as well. But
yeah. In a similar vein, we have another European athlete that's rounding out my rankings here that does have a lot of competition experience. She does have some good data points. I would say by far most notably winning Wodapalooza in 2022, 6 times games qualifier, 6 consecutive years through a variety of different styles of qualifying. She is getting older. She's probably towards the back end of her career. I think this is maybe the invitation that was potentially like most disputed amongst people who are trying to dispute them for whatever reason. But
she retired. She retired prior to the invitation. So that I think she was the first one to retire and then receive an invitation. So obviously people are going to say, like, why is Emma McQuaid competing? She's not competing anymore.
Well, I think that the invitation is coming based on her 15th place ranking in Rogue, and as we know, the Rogue ranking system is based on a small data set that doesn't account for global competitive outlets. And whereas in Apollo rankings, she's 37th, which is probably more appropriate to what she's done in the past 2 years specifically. But yeah, I mean, do you think this is okay to put her here and say you got to kind of earn it and prove it?
Yeah, and I don't think she will. And sorry, Emma, I just don't see it. I saw her at Rogue live in competition, and she was way off being even close to being second to last. I don't think she's training at the same. I don't think she's training at the same volume, same intensity, same grit and determination, and I think that's fine. She's had a phenomenal career. What she's been able to do with her body size, and it's just amazing. And she is the reincarnation of Sam Briggs. Well, Sam Briggs is not dead, but yeah, she has that same stuff going on, and she's earned everything she's gotten in her career because she's not athletically gifted as some of the other people on this list. So she really had to earn it, and she can be ridiculously proud of what she's done. I just don't see her doing anything at all in this competition against this field.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair to say. Gonna do this. We did go past the 90 minutes, but that's okay. I'm gonna do Patrick. Final thought on the women's fields, just as a whole. Nico, give you the opportunity to do the same, and then I'm gonna address 2 comments that noted from earlier.
I think my kind of what I take away from all of this is, like, on paper, this is a very good field, a very, very good field, and that's without Tia and a couple other athletes. However, the caveat is there's a lot of question marks. Like if we knew if Alex Kazan, Emma Lawson, Emma McQuaid, if they're all Bethany, if we knew if they're 100%, then guess what? We're gonna have a freaking fun season, and we're talking about a season where Laura might not be that hands down favorite, because those athletes would be taking points away from her and doing better in other things. So I think it'll be interesting to see what that first event in Indianapolis, what happens there, because I think that sets the tone for the following event. So I think what you have is in contrast to the men's field, you have more question marks in the women's field, and I think that's unfortunate, but at the same time makes it exciting as well.
And I think we're entering a new phase, not necessarily a revolution, but there is like a lot from the old guard is gone. We obviously, the Icelandic dominance is completely gone. We have no one up and coming. There's no one like the next Andy Thor started. It just isn't coming. And someone in Iceland is going to be, someone in Iceland is going to be screaming now, but let me see it first. And the same with, if you just go back, I don't know, 2-3 years, Mel O'Brien, Cara Saunders, so many athletes. Amanda Barnhart is retired. There's just a lot of athletes that aren't here anymore, and a lot of these new athletes will have to prove themselves. So we're going to have a very different conversation about a year from now, where someone we didn't think was going to do well, because someone is going to surprise us. Someone's going to be way higher or way lower. That's just the way power rankings work. And it's an exciting time. I miss these people that can actually threaten Laura and Tia. But yeah.
I think that's very well said. To just summarize what we saw in the women's field. A few things from earlier I want to address. I did hear, this was about Karen Freyova. I did hear that she got invited and declined the invite to WFP. She also did not do the games season this year. And just keep in mind that she was incredibly close with Lazar. She's a very personal and private person in general. And so, just don't be surprised if some of this competitive spirit that we've talked about is just like she's lacking the ability to tap into that for these big competitions. She did still do some small off-season events in Cyprus, in Pamplona, and we may see her do some competitions on the road. Patrick and I, of course, will be keeping track of that. But that's the extent of what I know about Karen Frey. And I mean, she's an amazing person and woman, and I just hope that she's doing.
Don't forget Dubai too. So between the competition she's won, she's made more than enough money to sustain herself. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see her at one of the semifinals competing unassociated.
just for the competition, like Elisa Fuliano has kind of said that she's
I
planning
wouldn't be
to do.
surprised.
Yeah.
Let's see what order. Okay, so there's three things in here, and I think that they all relate to each other. What are Brian and PC up to next week? Excited to see who the challengers end up being. And the question is for later, but if you've been looking at the challenger signups on Competition Quarter, is it on Competition or wherever it is? We have been looking at it. Who do you think can make the biggest splash? So if you're not aware, the qualifiers for the first tour event starts on March 19th. It's a Wednesday, and they run for 7 days. Patrick and I were thinking about doing a show towards the end of next week to look at the current athletes that are signed up. We've been keeping track of that on a daily basis. I have some notes and picks and whatever. So maybe Thursday or Friday next week, we'll do a show kind of set up for that. Obviously, right now, there's a huge amount of people that are really heavily invested in the start of the game season with the Open. And Patrick's going to continue to do the shows that he's doing with Kate for that over the next 2 weeks as well. But that's kind of our general plan, is to preview some of the potential qualifiers that are coming up. And then the following week, probably do one to talk about who's actually in the competition in the middle of it. And then after it finalizes, which don't know what that process will look like. But we'll try to provide you guys with some touch points for both the Open and also the WFP touring events that are coming up. At the end of the day, this is something that Patrick and I talk about a lot, and I want it to be really clear for you guys. We are interested in celebrating athletes who have worked extremely hard to have opportunities to compete and showcase their talents. And we are all people. We all have our own personal feelings, emotions, opinions. But as a company, we're trying to find the balance between representing all of the competitive outlets that the athletes had in a way that makes sense for us. Seems like you guys like Nico, so maybe we'll invite him back again too. I don't know if he's running out of jerseys to wear, but he's certainly not out of hot takes.
He's about to run out of money because he's going to owe me a beer. I don't know how much beers are in Denmark, but
Nico's doing just fine. All right. Well, hopefully that gives you guys some stuff to think about. We're always grateful for you guys being here, weighing in with the stuff. I'll let Patrick do the honors today.
Well, actually, before we go, Nico, do you want to talk over this real quick?
What is it? Oh, yeah. I just wanted to make a YouTube recommendation. Shout out to my boy Will Morat. Also, this movie is made by my old boss, Sevan Matosian, who also has a podcast. It's called Only Three. It was back in, help me out here, Brian. I want to say
2013, I think.
13. So prior years, there had been this rule: if a world champion, Rich Froning or Graham Holmberg, someone like that, competed, that would activate another spot on the leaderboard. So initially, they thought there was going to be 5 spots available on the leaderboard because Rich and Graham Holmberg would activate another spot. But CrossFit decided not to enforce that rule, so there can only be 3 people competing, which is pretty simple. Then Rich takes 1 spot, Scott Paisley takes 1 spot, and Graham Holmberg or Marcus Hendren takes the 3rd spot. However, spoiler alert, that's not what happened. So go watch this.
I would say it's
Only 3.
I think it's one of the top 5 competitive
and
CrossFit videos that I've seen in the history.
And Rich farts in the beginning. Right there, he farts. It's super loud on camera. But yeah, go watch it. It's classic Sevan from back in the day, where it's more storytelling than image quality, and a lot of stuff is out of focus. But it's really good. It's about an hour long. It's a good reminder of where we were. Yeah.
And we're going to start a weekly show where we do Nico's recommendations starting next week as well. He's going to find obscure YouTube videos that might be CrossFit related or might not be, and he's just going to have suggestions. No, actually, that is a really good. That was one of the first ones I watched. I remember, that's when I became a Graham Holmberg fan, and then it's really cool. Good shout out there, Brian. Okay, so HER CBD. I know open season is upon us. For those participating open, you probably need some stuff for recovery, or you're just training. HER CBD that's who you need to get. Get the relief stick. The relief stick, you can get that for 20% off by using Friend20 at checkout. There it is right there. So shout out to Carl and the whole HER CBD fam. Appreciate their support. And as always, the biggest supporters are those in the chat. Thank you for coming on and listening to a bunch of guys from just talk about freaking fitness. We really appreciate that. we do it because for the athletes, and we also do it because there's an audience that loves to listen. Thank you, Judy, because you're one of those people as well. So that being said, good night from Germany. Good night from Copenhagen. Is that where you're at now?
No, I'm in Aarhus, so like 3 hours from Copenhagen.
Okay, so whatever. So your country, and also good afternoon from Wisconsin from Brian. So I just want to say, as always, be friendly, our friend.